The rain that night didn't fall, it drilled, like the sky had a job and was clocking overtime. I'd pulled under a sycamore in Riverton Grove, a neighborhood where the sidewalks sparkle and the trouble hides behind hedges. Headlights threw a shaky halo across my hood, and before I could finish a breath, a baton cracked the metal loud enough to make a porch light jump. Out of the car, the officer barked, hand already on the stick like it was a pen he'd been dying to sign with. His nameplate read Dutton Officer Mark Dutton. His partner Kyle Reese flanked the passenger side flashlight, slicing my face. No license and registration, no good evening. Just the kind of tone men use when they think the rain, the road, and your body all answer to them. I killed the engine, rolled the window down, hands up at shoulder height, palms open. I was not soft, and I wasn't here to perform. "Is there a problem, officers?" I asked, voice steady. Dutton smiled without warmth. "Tap, tap on the hood, that baton again." "Wrong neighborhood," he said. "Wrong time." Reese tugged my forearm before the question mark could land. "Hands where I can see them," he snapped, as if my hands weren't already in the air. The phone in my jacket slid out and skittered into a puddle. The screen lit with a name only a few people in this state know, Director Alton Reed. Reese's boot nudged it aside, casual, like kicking a leaf. "Sir," I said through my teeth, "my ID is in my bag on the passenger's seat. I'm going to reach slowly." Dutton didn't look at the bearing. He planted a palm between my shoulder blades and pressed, practiced, precise, the kind of push that hurts without leaving a charge that sticks. My cheek met cold steel. I tasted rain and salt. "We'll get to that," he said. "First, you tell us why you're really here. You should know this about me. Panic isn't my first language. Inventory is." I watched the street sign reflected in the wet hood, Franklin and Laurel. I clocked the patrol number on their cruiser, the time on the dash across the glass, the exact phrase, "wrong neighborhood," the baton tap that became a strike. I memorized badge numbers the way cooks memorize heat. When Dutton cinched the cuffs so tight my fingers tingled, I didn't argue. I filed it. Precinct 7 smells like old coffee and a broken promise. They sat me in a little room with a steel table and a chair that didn't pretend to be comfortable. People passed the window and looked in the way you look at a museum exhibit that might move curiosity stapled to contempt. No Miranda, no paperwork, no reason except the kind you can't write. You don't belong here. After an hour that felt longer, a sergeant cracked the door and tossed me a bone. One call. I didn't ask for a public defender. I asked for a phone that worked. When the line clicked, I didn't waste words. "Director," I said, calm as a winter lake lantern check begins early. 12 words, no names, no speeches. 5 minutes later, the air changed. Phones rang that weren't supposed to. A lieutenant materialized with a face like a question mark someone ironed flat. The cuffs came off with a click that sounded smaller than the truth. "You're free to go," someone said. No apology. Silence tried to sweep its own footprints. Back at my hotel, something had shifted barely but enough for a trained eye. A zipper tab turned the wrong way. A closet door that didn't catch. 8 minutes missing from the hallway camera feed like someone took scissors to time. Then a text from an unknown number. "Stop if you want to stay alive." No emojis, no punctuation, rejection of accountability, never needs decoration. I didn't gasp. I took a photo, preserved the original encrypted. The copy wrote the exact time down. "Fear is a visitor. You don't offer it a chair. Morning gray and heavy, coffee going cold by the minute." I opened my laptop and let the city's pretty reports peel back until the raw stuff bled through excessive force. Complaints closed without follow-up. Body cameras failing at the precise second a fist rose or a taser buzzed. Medical charts where fractures softened into bruises overnight. One signature kept returning like a watermark: Lieutenant Howard Pike, Internal Affairs. It wasn't sloppy. It was engineered, a house designed to hide its own exits. I made a call on a line that lives behind a lot of locks. "I need eyes on Pike," I said, "and on retired Captain Lawson. Shell Companies transfers anything that smells like laundry." Priority 1. Hours later they were not extravagant amounts, but precise ones, wires landing within 72 hours of each complaint's miraculous disappearance. A crooked rhythm disguised as routine. They didn't just push back, they engineered a scare. Night 2, someone pounded my door, a voice through the wood. "Police, open up." SWAT. Hostage report. Boots thudded down the hall, battering ram breathed near the hinge. I moved off the line of the door, heart slow by force. Unit on the other side, I said, give me your incident number and two-step verification phrase. Silence. Then chatter. Then a new voice, older, annoyed. Hold. Confirm code. A beat later. Stand down. Spoof call. Trace hits an internal terminal. I opened the door to an empty hall and the smell of gun oil, then pulled the building logs, IP routes, misaimed GPS request, forged incident number, and saved them thrice. Truth wears receipts. I went back to Franklin and Laurel in daylight with a camera you couldn't ignore. Wide shots of intersections, plates, patrol patterns, notes murmured into a mic. Within minutes, a cruiser braked Dutton out, first Boots, splashing hand grazing the holster like muscle memory. Reese a half step behind. You're interfering with police work, Dutton said, loud for the crowd, not for me. Put the camera down. I raised the mic. Officer Dutton, Officer Reese, I'm on a public sidewalk documenting public officials in public. State statute covers this. I said their names slowly, nails tapped into air. A bus stop bystander raised his phone. A porch door cracked open. You could feel a room gathering where there wasn't one. Reese leaned in shadow, covering my shoes. Don't test us. Dutton's voice dropped to that private cold men think is a secret. Accidents happen over here. People go missing. The line hung ugly, heavy. Before I could answer, a young officer stepped out from a second car probation patch. Bright name Evan Cho. Sir, he said, voice steadying, mid-sentence, what's our legal basis? She's on a public sidewalk. Dutton turned surprise, melting to anger. You questioning me now? Cho didn't flinch. I framed all three of them, officers, bystanders, Sky, and said into the mic, for the record, 2 officers within 2 feet attempting to intimidate a citizen engaged in a protected activity. Then I clicked stop and walked, not a retreat, a summons. An hour after the promotion ceremony, yes, that went through, the union rolled out their counterpunch. A slick, spliced video with all the inconvenient seconds cut out a statement about morale that meant bury it. I asked for a meeting. I didn't bring speeches. I brought a folder. Photos of my shoulder baton, bloomed purple, timestamped by an independent physician. Hallway security showing the 8-minute blackout. Metadata from the SWAT spoof, the internal terminal path. A recording the text read aloud by a carrier rep confirming it originated from Kyle Reese's personal number. And then Officer Cho's shoulders squared, voice anchored. I witnessed the sidewalk encounter. Captain Brooks complied. Officer Dutton threatened her with an accident. I'll testify to all of it. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees without touching the thermostat. The hearing room the next week felt too small to hold what it had to hold. Folding chairs, cameras, residents who'd been told for years to calm down. I slid a flash drive to the clerk and nodded. Exhibit 1, dash cam unaltered baton, hitting hood, my hands visible, no lunge, no threat. Exhibit 2, a civilian window cam, the shoulder tap that was a strike, the cuffs wrenched past compliance. Exhibit 3, a spreadsheet, dates, amounts, accounts tied to 2 shell LLCs that lived at the same P.O. box as a retired vendor. 8 complaints, 8 transfers within 72 hours. Not proof by itself, sure, until Exhibit 4, subpoenas, chain of custody, the Attorney General's forensic affidavit. The union attorney argued correlation versus causation. The board member with the calmest voice pointed to the lab's metadata report and said, Foundation is satisfied. Witnesses came a college kid who watched his library books fall into a puddle while his face hit a hood. A delivery driver stopped 3 times on the same route. An elderly gardener grabbed at his own fence. Stories that used to float like fog now stacked like bricks you couldn't ignore. The board read the findings slow, like weight demanded pace. Officer Mark Dutton. Officer Kyle Reese, gross misconduct, excessive force, false reporting, abuse of authority, terminated effective immediately. Referred to the U.S. attorney. No cheers, a hush that sounded like a long exhale. Lieutenant Howard Pike's suspension pending criminal prosecution for bribery evidence, tampering, obstruction. The room didn't break. It reassembled into something like belief. I took a thicker binder to City Hall, wood-paneled echo microphones, hungry for the wrong kind of story. 41 cases within the statute, I said, opening to tab 1. You can spend this year defending the past, or you can invest in a future that doesn't produce lawsuits. I laid out the plan: independent, cloud-retained body cams, de-escalation and bias training with real scenarios, bilingual liaisons at intake, an audit team for evidence handling, rotating patrols so no zip code is a fiefdom. The vote didn't happen that day. It happened after the risk manager put dollar signs where pain had been, and residents lined the walls with timelines that sounded a lot like my exhibits. It passed wider than anyone predicted. 6 months later, the numbers showed up shyly because numbers are shy. Excessive force complaints down 78%. Witness cooperation up 45. Successful prosecutions up 18. Not because more people were hauled in, but because evidence was clean and testimony didn't have to fight a department. Roll call questions changed, not how many stops, but how did it end? Did anyone feel heard? Officer Cho pinned Sergeant Stripes in a room the size of a bakery. He built coffee with a cop in laundromats and church basements. Spanish Vietnamese ASL on the sign-up sheet by month 3. The line wrapped the block and people stayed to exchange phone numbers that had nothing to do with emergencies. A year to the week, I walked past Franklin and Laurel in full sun. The curb that had held my knees now held a chalk hopscotch and a pink scooter tipped on its side. A man in a grocery store jacket rolled a card out and paused. Kyle Reese, recognition flickered. No triumph in me, just a nod that said, accountability doesn't need a parade. He looked away first. Inside the precinct, our wall of seized weapons had turned into a wall of thank you notes and flyers for youth clinics and a hand-lettered mission from a third-grade class: protect and serve everyone. Director Reed called that afternoon. Central wants your model. Can you scale it? I stared out at a neighborhood that finally breathed at its natural pace. We're just getting started, I said. I know someone will say this was revenge dressed as reform. It wasn't. Revenge wants a scene. Reform wants tomorrow, the boring, beautiful daily habit of receipts, of turning cameras on and egos down, of asking better questions at 2 a.m. on a wet curb. It started with a baton on a hood and a threat in a whisper. It grew into a ledger of facts that refused to go away. Did it fix everything? No. Nothing that matters stays fixed. It stays tended. If you made it this far, tell me this. Where do you draw the line between bad apples and a bad barrel? Have you seen a system change from the inside, or do you believe it only changes from the outside? Drop your city, your story, your yes but, and your no more in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe receipts beat rumors, and if you think justice isn't just a verdict, it's a habit we practice together tomorrow.